Maya had always been different from her siblings. While her older brother loved being the center of attention at family gatherings, and her younger sister thrived in social settings, Maya preferred the comfort of silence and solitude. She found her peace in the one thing that never judged her, never demanded anything from her, and always listened to piano. At 23 years old, Maya's life looked ordinary from the outside. She worked at a small tech company, sitting in a gray cubicle, analyzing data and creating spreadsheets. Her co-workers knew her as the quiet girl who brought lunch from home, rarely joined after-work gatherings, and always left exactly at 5 o'clock. What they didn't know was where she rushed off to every evening. Her apartment was tiny, located on the third floor of an old building where the elevator worked only half the time. The walls were thin enough that she could hear her neighbors' conversations, their television shows, even their arguments. But tucked in the corner of her small living room sat an upright piano, the one luxury she'd allowed herself. Bought secondhand and moved in with the help of 3 struggling college students, she'd paid $50 each, every night. Maya would come home, change into comfortable clothes, and sit at that piano bench. But she had to wait. She'd set a timer on her phone for 8 o'clock, the time when she figured most neighbors had finished dinner and wouldn't mind some background music. Even then, she played softly, always conscious of the walls, always worried about disturbing someone. Her gift remained a secret, shared only with the 4 walls of her apartment and the occasional passerby on the street below who might pause and wonder where that beautiful music was coming from. Maya had learned to play piano by herself. Her family couldn't afford lessons when she was young. By the time she was earning her own money, she felt too old, too embarrassed to start as a beginner. So she turned to the internet, watching countless tutorial videos, reading free sheet music, practicing the same pieces over and over until her fingers ached. She had no teacher to correct her mistakes, no one to tell her if she was doing it right. All she had was her own ear and an overwhelming need to express something she couldn't put into words. Her college roommate, Lily, was the complete opposite of Maya. Lily knew everyone, went to every party, and had a talent for pulling Maya out of her shell. Even when Maya resisted, they'd met during freshman year, randomly assigned as roommates, and somehow the friendship had stuck even after graduation. Lily worked in event planning now, which meant she was always surrounded by people, always organizing something, always trying to get Maya to be more social. "You have to come this time," Lily said during one of their weekly coffee meets. "I'm serious, Maya. You can't keep hiding in that apartment forever." Maya stirred her latte, avoiding eye contact. "I'm not hiding. I'm just comfortable at home." "You're 23, not 73, Lily pressed. "This event is important to me. It's a charity fundraiser for the Children's Hospital, and I helped organize the whole thing. I need at least one friend there for moral support. Plus, there'll be free food." "Really good free food." Maya smiled despite herself. Lily knew her weaknesses. "Fine, but I'm not staying long." "Yes." Lily practically jumped out of her seat. "You won't regret it, I promise. It's at the Grand Hall downtown. Fancy place. You can wear that blue dress you bought last year and never wore." The following Saturday, Maya stood in front of her mirror, feeling ridiculous in the blue dress that suddenly seemed too formal, too attention-grabbing. She almost called Lily to cancel 3 times, but knew her friend would probably show up at her door and drag her there personally. So she took a deep breath, grabbed her small purse, and headed out. The Grand Hall was exactly as its name suggested. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings. Marble floors gleamed under soft lighting, and well-dressed people mingled with champagne glasses in their hands. Maya felt immediately out of place. She spotted Lily across the room, talking animatedly to a group of people, her hands gesturing as she spoke. Maya made her way over, trying to look confident. "You made it." Lily hugged her tightly. "See? Not so terrible, right?" Maya looked around at the crowd, the elegant decorations, the silent auction tables displaying expensive items. "It's a lot. Just relax. Grab some appetizers from that table over there. I have to check on a few things, but I'll be back soon." As Lily disappeared into the crowd, Maya wandered toward the refreshment table, feeling awkward and alone. She picked up a small plate and added a few items she didn't really want, just to have something to do with her hands. That's when she noticed that a beautiful grand piano positioned in the corner of the ballroom. Its black surface polished to perfection, reflecting the chandelier lights above it. She found herself drawn to it. Moving closer even as she told herself to stay away, her fingers itched to touch those keys, to feel the smooth ivory beneath her fingertips. She stood there for a moment just looking at it, imagining what it would feel like to play an instrument like that instead of her humble upright at home. The next hour passed in a blur of polite, small talk with strangers. Watching the silent auction and trying to look like she belonged, Lily checked on her periodically, always with an encouraging smile. Then something shifted in the room. Maya noticed people whispering, looking worried. Lily appeared suddenly at her side, her face flushed with stress. "The pianist isn't coming," she said, her voice tight with panic. "His car broke down on the highway and there's no way he'll make it in time. We promised the donors live music. The director is furious." Maya's heart went out to her friend. She knew how much work Lily had put into this event. "Can you find someone else?" At this hour, on a Saturday night, Lily ran her hand through her hair. Every pianist in the city is probably already booked. They stood there in silence for a moment. Maya's eyes drifted back to that grand piano, sitting silent and waiting. Her mouth opened before her brain could stop her. "I could try." Lily turned to her, confused. "What?" "I could. I play piano. I mean, I'm not professional or anything, but I could play some background music. Just simple stuff, so it's not completely silent." Lily's eyes widened. "You play piano? Since when?" "We lived together for 3 years." Maya felt her cheeks burning. "I taught myself. I play at home. It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal?" Lily grabbed her hands. "Maya, you might just save this entire event. Are you sure you can do it?" Maya's stomach twisted into knots. Every instinct screamed at her to take it back, to make up an excuse, to stay invisible like she always had. But looking at her friend's desperate face, thinking about the charity and the children's hospital, she found herself nodding. "I'll try." "But Lily, I'm serious. I'm not a professional. Don't expect too much." Lily was already pulling her toward the event coordinator, a sophisticated woman in her 50s who looked both stressed and relieved when Lily explained the situation. The woman, who introduced herself as Mrs. Rodriguez, looked Maya up and down with cautious hope. "We just need pleasant background music," she said, her voice kind despite the stress lines on her forehead. "Nothing complicated. Just something people can talk over while they browse the auction items. Can you do that?" Maya's hands were shaken as she nodded. "Yes, I can do that." As she walked toward that grand piano, the crowd beginning to notice the young woman approaching the instrument, Maya felt like she was moving through water. Everything seemed slow and surreal. She had no idea that in the next few minutes, her entire life was about to change forever. Maya's legs felt weak as she approached the grand piano. Each step seemed to echo in her mind, drowning out the chatter of the crowd around her. She could feel eyes beginning to turn her way, curious glances from strangers wondering who this young woman was, and whether she could actually play. The piano bench was smooth leather, far nicer than the wooden one she had at home. She adjusted it slightly, her hands trembling as she did so. The piano itself was magnificent up close as Steinway, she realized, probably worth more than everything she owned combined. The keys looked perfect, not a scratch or stain on them. For a brief moment, panic seized her. What if she wasn't good enough? What if she embarrassed herself in front of all these important people? What if she let Lily down? She took a deep breath and placed her fingers on the keys. They felt cool and smooth, responsive in a way her old upright never was. She pressed down gently on middle C, and the sound that came out was pure and clear, filling the space around her with a richness she'd never experienced before. Despite her nervousness, a small smile touched her lips. This was a real piano, a professional instrument, and for just this moment she got to play it. Maya decided to start with something safe, something she'd played 100 times in her apartment. Her fingers found the opening notes of a classical piece she loved, one she'd learned years ago from a tutorial video. The melody was gentle and familiar, perfect for background music like Mrs. Rodriguez had requested. As she played, she kept her eyes down, focusing on the keys. Trying to pretend the room full of people wasn't there at first, the conversations around her continued. People were still mingling, discussing auction items, laughing at jokes. That was good, Maya told herself. That's exactly what background music was supposed to be, present, but not demanding attention. She relaxed slightly, finding her rhythm, letting muscle memory take over, but then something strange began to happen. As her confidence grew, as she felt the responsiveness of this beautiful instrument under her fingers, something inside her shifted. The piece she was playing felt too rigid suddenly, too confined. Her fingers began to stray from the exact notes on the sheet music she'd memorized, adding small flourishes here and there, a different chord progression, an unexpected harmony in the left hand. Nothing dramatic at first, just tiny variations that felt right. Maya had done this before at home. Late at night, when she was alone and no one could hear, she'd take a familiar piece and make it her own, adding bits of other songs she loved, mixing in melodies that appeared in her head. She'd never thought much about it. It was just playing, just experimenting. But this piano responded to every nuance, every subtle change in pressure, in a way that encouraged her to explore further. The classical piece began to transform. Jazz elements crept in, syncopated rhythms that Maya had picked up from late-night radio shows. Her right hand danced across the higher keys, while her left hand created a walking bass line she'd taught herself from an old recording. The melody was still recognizable, but it was becoming something new, something that existed somewhere between classical tradition and modern improvisation. She transitioned into another piece. But instead of stopping between songs, she let them flow together, one melting into the next. A romantic-era composition blended seamlessly into a contemporary song she'd heard on the radio, which then shifted into something entirely her own, a melody that had been living in her head for months. Never played aloud before this moment, Maya was no longer thinking about the people around her. She wasn't worried about making mistakes or being judged. She was simply playing, letting the music pour out of her the way water flows from an opened dam. All those nights in her small apartment, playing softly so as not to disturb the neighbors. All those years of teaching herself in isolation, of pouring her emotions into music because she had no other way to express them. It all came flooding out through her fingers. The conversations in the ballroom had grown quieter, though Maya didn't notice. She was lost in the music. Her eyes closed now, her body swaying slightly with the rhythm. Her fingers flew across the keys with increasing complexity, creating cascading runs that sparkled like water, then diving into deep, resonant chords that seemed to shake something loose in the chest of anyone listening. She played with dynamics she'd never dared attempt at home, where she always had to stay quiet. Now she could be soft as a whisper one moment, then build to a powerful crescendo that filled every corner of the grand hall. The piano responded to her every intention, and she felt a kind of conversation happening between herself and the instrument, a give and take that was almost magical. Maya wove together fragments of everything she'd ever learned. Classical training from online videos, mixed with jazz techniques from tutorial websites, folk melodies she'd picked up from old recordings blended with contemporary harmonies she'd figured out by ear. She didn't know the proper names for what she was doing. She just knew it felt right, sounded right, expressed something that words never could. A particularly complex section flowed from her fingers, her hands crossing over each other, creating layers of sound that seemed impossible for one person to produce. This was something she'd worked on for months in her apartment, practicing the coordination until her hands cramped. Now it emerged effortlessly, naturally, as if the music was playing her rather than the other way around. Time lost all meaning. Maya had intended to play just 1 or 2 short pieces, maybe 5 minutes of simple background music. But the music kept coming, one idea flowing into the next, each transition feeling necessary and inevitable. She explored different moods, playful and light, then deep and contemplative, then building with hope and energy. What Maya didn't see was the transformation happening in the room around her. The conversations had stopped entirely. Champagne glasses were lowered, forgotten in hands that had gone still. The auction items sat unexamined as 200 people turned their attention to the young woman at the piano. Some had moved closer, drawn by the music like moths to light. Others stood frozen where they were, afraid that any movement might break whatever spell had been cast. An older gentleman near the front, distinguished looking with silver hair and an expensive suit, had tears running down his cheeks. A young couple held hands, their faces reflecting wonder. Mrs. Rodriguez stood with her hand over her mouth, her earlier stress completely forgotten. Lily was somewhere in the crowd, though Maya had lost track of her, probably crying with pride and shock at discovering this hidden side of her friend. Among the crowd was someone particularly significant, though Maya had no way of knowing this. Professor David Chen, one of the most respected music teachers in the city, had come to the event reluctantly, fulfilling a social obligation to a donor. He'd been planning to leave early, bored by the usual charity event routine, but now he stood transfixed, his experienced ear catching things that others might miss: the sophisticated harmonic choices, the natural musical logic in her improvisations, the technical facility that shouldn't exist in someone who, he assumed, must have trained at one of the top conservatories. He moved closer to the piano, studying Maya's hands, her posture, the way she was completely absorbed in the music. He'd taught piano for 35 years, had worked with prodigies and professionals, had heard countless performances at concert halls around the world. What he was witnessing now was extraordinary, not just because of the technical skill, but because of something harder to define: a raw, emotional honesty, a unique voice that hadn't been polished and shaped by years of formal training. Maya played for nearly 20 minutes straight, though she had no idea how much time had passed. She finally brought the music to a close with a series of gentle, descending chords that seemed to settle like snow, soft and peaceful. The final note hung in the air, sustained by the piano's long resonance, gradually fading into silence. Only then did Maya open her eyes. Only then did she lift her hands from the keys and become aware once again of where she was. And only then did she see what her music had done to the room around her. The silence that followed was absolute. Maya blinked, her eyes adjusting to the room after having them closed for so long. She expected to see people scattered around the ballroom, chatting and browsing auction items. Perhaps a few polite faces turned her way. Instead, what she saw made her heart stop. Everyone was staring at her, not just glancing in her direction, but truly staring, with expressions she couldn't quite read. Some faces showed shock, others something like awe. Several people had tears on their cheeks. The entire fundraiser had come to a complete standstill, and every single person in that grand hall was focused on her. Maya's first instinct was panic. Had she done something wrong? Had she played too loud, been too showy, disrupted the event? She started to stand, ready to apologize. When the applause began, it wasn't the polite, scattered clapping she might have expected for background music. It was thunderous, immediate, and overwhelming. 200 people began applauding at once, and within seconds, they were standing, giving her an ovation that seemed to shake the crystal chandeliers above. The sound washed over Maya like a physical force, and she stood frozen at the piano bench, completely unprepared for this reaction. Her hands were shaking again, but for a different reason now. She managed a small, awkward bow, unsure of what else to do. People were shouting bravo and amazing. Some were still wiping tears from their eyes while they clapped. Maya searched the crowd for Lily and found her friend near the front, crying openly, her hands clasped together in front of her face as if in prayer. Mrs. Rodriguez rushed forward, her own eyes wet with tears. She grabbed Maya's hands and squeezed them tightly. "That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "In 30 years of organizing events, I have never ever experienced anything like that. Thank you. Thank you so much." Before Maya could respond, people began crowding around the piano. They wanted to shake her hand, to tell her how her music had moved them, to ask where she'd studied and when her next performance would be. Maya felt overwhelmed, almost dizzy from the attention. She answered questions as simply as she could, still not quite believing this was happening. "Where do you perform regularly?" one woman asked. I don't. I just play at home. Which conservatory did you graduate from? A man in an expensive tuxedo wanted to know. I didn't go to a conservatory. I taught myself. This answer caused visible shock on several faces. People exchanged glances, clearly not believing her. How could someone with that level of skill be so? It seemed impossible. Through the crowd, Professor Chen pushed his way forward. His presence seemed to command respect. People naturally moved aside for him. He was probably in his 60s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly who he was. Excuse me, he said, his voice cutting through the chatter. May I speak with you for a moment? Maya nodded, grateful for an excuse to step away from the overwhelming crowd. He led her to a quieter corner of the ballroom, and Lily somehow materialized at her side, protective and curious. My name is David Chen, he said, offering his hand. I'm a professor at the Riverside Conservatory of Music. I've been teaching piano for 35 years. He paused, studying her face carefully. What you just did was extraordinary. I need to know, who is your teacher? Maya felt her cheeks burning. I don't have a teacher. I learn from videos online, books from the library, just dot. Figuring things out on my own, Professor Chen's eyebrows rose. You're self-taught? Entirely. Yes, sir. He was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. That's remarkable. And troubling. Yes, stomach dropped. Troubling? Troubling because it means you've been developing this gift in isolation, without guidance, without the resources and opportunities you deserve. He shook his head slowly. What I heard tonight, the technical facility, the musical intuition, the emotional depth that doesn't happen by accident. You have something rare, something precious. But raw talent without proper cultivation is like a diamond still in the ground. Lily squeezed Maya's hand. Sensing her friend's discomfort with the praise, Professor Chen continued. I heard things in your playing that I spend years trying to teach my advanced students. The way you voiced those chords, the natural rubato, the sophisticated harmonic choices, these aren't things people just pick up from tutorial videos. You have an innate musicality that's, quite honestly, astounding. I just play what sounds right to me, Maya said quietly. Exactly, the professor smiled. That's what makes it special. You haven't been trained to play correctly according to someone else's rules. You've developed your own musical voice. But imagine what you could do with proper training, with access to better instruments, with the opportunity to study music theory, composition, and performance technique at a deeper level. Maya didn't know what to say. She'd never imagined herself as a serious musician. Playing piano was just something she did for herself, a private joy she'd never thought to share with the world. I'd like to offer you a full scholarship to the conservatory, Professor Chen said, and Maya's world tilted on its axis. Full tuition, access to our practice facilities, private instruction with our best faculty. We have students who've competed internationally who aren't at your level. It would be my honor to help you develop your gift. Maya's mouth opened, but no words came out. A scholarship? To a real conservatory? It felt like something from a dream, impossible and overwhelming. She needs time to think about it, Lily said, her voice protective. She'd seen the shock on Maya's face and knew her friend was on the verge of being completely overwhelmed. Of course, Professor Chen said quickly. He pulled a card from his pocket and handed it to Maya. Please, take your time, but I hope you'll seriously consider it. Talent like yours comes along maybe once in a decade. It would be a tragedy to let it remain hidden. As the professor stepped away, other people continued to approach Maya. One woman, who introduced herself as a representative from a local recording studio, wanted to discuss the possibility of recording an album. A man who ran a downtown jazz club offered her a regular weekend slot. Someone else asked if she'd be willing to teach private lessons. The offers and requests came so fast that Maya's head spun. What she didn't know was that at least a dozen people had been recording her performance on their phones. Within the hour, those videos would start appearing online, shared by people who'd witnessed something they felt others needed to see. By the next morning, the videos would have thousands of views. By the afternoon, they'd go viral. But in that moment, Standing in the grand hall with Lily's hand in hers and a business card from a prestigious music professor in her pocket, Maya felt something shift inside her. For 23 years, she'd kept herself small, quiet, hidden away. She'd convinced herself that her piano playing was just a hobby, nothing special, certainly nothing worth sharing with the world. But the faces around her told a different story. These weren't people being polite. They'd been genuinely moved, touched by something in her music that went beyond technical skill. She'd made them feel something, and in doing so, she'd felt something to a sense of purpose and possibility she'd never experienced before. Mrs. Rodriguez approached again, this time with a glass of water for Maya, who realized her throat was dry. "I need to ask you something," the older woman said with a warm smile. "Would you consider playing at our annual gala next month? We could actually pay you this time. Quite well, in fact." Maya looked at Lily, who was grinning through her tears, nodding encouragingly. She looked down at her hands, the same hands that had trembled with fear just an hour ago. She thought about her small apartment, her quiet life, her careful routine of staying invisible. Then she thought about how it felt to play that beautiful piano, to let the music flow freely without worrying about volume or neighbors or judgment. She thought about the faces in the crowd, the tears, the standing ovation, the feeling of connecting with people through her music. Yes, she heard herself say, "I'd like that," she said it. Maya realized she'd just made a choice that would change everything. She didn't know about the videos being uploaded, didn't know that by morning she'd wake up to hundreds of messages and notifications. She didn't know that her quiet, invisible life was about to become very public, very quickly. All she knew was that for the first time in her life, she'd stepped out of the shadows, and the light, though terrifying, felt strangely like coming home. Maya woke up the next morning to a sound she'd never heard before, her phone buzzing continuously, like an angry bee trapped against her nightstand. She rolled over, squinting at the bright screen, saw notification after notification scrolling past, faster than she could read them. Emails, text messages, social media alerts, missed calls from numbers she didn't recognize. Her phone had been on silent all night, and now it was trying to catch up with everything that had happened while she slept. Confused and still half asleep, she picked it up and started scrolling. Her heart began to race as she realized what she was seeing. Videos of her performance from last night were everywhere. Not just one or two dozens of them, taken from different angles, posted by different people. And they weren't just sitting there with a few views. The numbers next to them were staggering. 50,000 views. 100,000. One video had over 300,000 views and was still climbing. "Oh no," Maya whispered to her empty apartment. "Oh no, oh no, oh no." The comments under the videos were overwhelming. Thousands of people from all over the world were writing about her performance. "Who is this girl? This is the most beautiful piano playing I've ever heard. Gee, needs a record deal immediately. Been playing piano for 20 years and I can't do half of what she just did. This made me cry at my desk at work." Some comments were more specific, more technical. Professional musicians and music teachers were analyzing her technique, discussing her unusual style, debating whether she was classically trained or jazz trained or something else entirely. A few people claimed she must be a professional, pretending to be an amateur for viral marketing. Others defended her, saying you could see the genuine surprise and overwhelm on her face when the crowd reacted. Maya's hands were shaking as she scrolled through message after message. Her email inbox had exploded overnight. Record labels were reaching out, asking if she had representation. Concert venues wanted to book her. Music blogs were requesting interviews. Someone from a morning television show wanted her to come on and perform live. A talent agency offered to represent her. The messages kept coming, and Maya felt like she was drowning. She called Lily, who answered on the first ring. "Have you seen it?" Her friend asked immediately. "Maya, you're everywhere." "My mom sent me one of the videos this morning, and she had no idea it was you until I told her. It's on the national news websites. People are calling you the mystery pianist." "I don't understand," Maya said, her voice small. "It was just one performance. At a charity event. How did this happen?" Because you're incredible. That's how. People recognize real talent when they see it. And in a world full of overproduced, auto-tuned everything, watching someone just sit down and pour their heart out like you did, it's rare. It's special. People are hungry for something real. Maya sat on her bed, staring at the wall of her small apartment. Just yesterday morning, she'd woken up in this same bed, gone to her same job, lived her same quiet life. Now strangers around the world were watching her, talking about her, forming opinions about her talent and her future. It felt surreal, like it was happening to someone else. Her phone rang in. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? Is this Maya? The voice was professional, confident. My name is Rachel Torres. I'm an artist manager based in New York. I've been working in the music industry for 15 years, and I had to call you personally after seeing your performance last night. Maya didn't know what to say. New York? An artist manager? This felt like a movie, not real life. Rachel continued, not waiting for a response. I've worked with Grammy winners, with artists who've sold millions of albums. But what I saw in that video, that raw talent, that emotional authenticity, it's exactly what the music world needs right now. Have you signed with anyone yet? Do you have representation? I know. I work at a tech company. I analyze data. I'm not a professional musician. There was a pause on the other end. You're not a professional musician? Maya, after last night, you are whether you planned to be or not. The question is whether you want to take control of your narrative or let it happen to you. Trust me, with this much attention, things are going to move fast either way. Over the next hour, Maya received 6 more calls from different managers and agents. Each one told her similar things, that she had something special, that opportunities like this didn't come along often, that she needed professional guidance to navigate what was coming. Their enthusiasm was both thrilling and terrifying. By noon, Maya was supposed to be at work, but she'd called in sick. How could she possibly sit in her cubicle and pretend everything was normal when her entire world had turned upside down? She sat at her small kitchen table with a cup of tea. Trying to process everything, Professor Chen called around 2 in the afternoon. Unlike the managers and agents, his voice was calm, almost gentle. I imagine you're having quite an overwhelming day, he said. That's an understatement, Maya replied, surprised by how relieved she felt to hear his voice. I've been fielding calls all morning, too. Apparently everyone wants to know who taught you, where you studied, what my secret method is, he chuckled softly. I've been telling them the truth, that you're entirely self-taught, and that I only met you last night. Some people don't believe me. They think I'm being modest. Professor Chen, I don't know what to do. Everyone wants something from me, and I don't even know what I want for myself. That's the wisest thing you've said so far, he replied. Maya, you're standing at a crossroads right now. One path leads toward fame and commercial success, record deals, concerts, viral videos, all of that. There's nothing wrong with that path. Many musicians find fulfillment there. But there's another path too. One focused on deepening your artistry, on truly understanding your craft, on becoming not just a performer, but a musician in the fullest sense. Maya listened carefully as he continued. You have a natural gift, but gifts need nurturing. You could sign with a label tomorrow, and they'd package you as the viral piano sensation, put out an album of pop covers and make you famous. Or you could take time to really develop your voice, to study and grow, to figure out what you want to say musically. Both paths are valid, but only one of them will still be available a year from now. His words cut through the noise of all the other offers and opportunities. What are you saying? I'm saying that my scholarship offer still stands. Come study at the conservatory. Learn music theory, composition, the history of piano performance. Work with me and my colleagues to develop your technique. You'll have access to practice rooms with excellent pianos, to other talented musicians, to a community that will support your growth. And if, after a year or 2, you decide you want to pursue commercial success, you'll do so with a much stronger foundation. But all these people are calling now, Maya said. What if the opportunity disappears? Real talent doesn't disappear, Professor Chen said firmly. If you're truly as gifted as I believe you are, the opportunities will still be there. Better ones, in fact, because you'll be ready for them. But if you rush into this world unprepared, the industry will chew you up and spit you out. I've seen it happen too many times. Maya thought about her tiny apartment, her quiet life, her job analyzing spreadsheets. Just yesterday, that life had felt safe, comfortable, predictable. Now, it felt impossibly small, like a cage she hadn't realized she was living in. "Can I ask you something?" she said quietly. "Of course. Am I really that good? Or are people just excited because of the story, the self-taught girl, the viral video, all of that?" Professor Chen was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was serious. "Maya, I've dedicated my life to music. I've heard thousands of pianists, from beginners to masters. What you did last night was extraordinary, not because of the story, but because of the music itself. Yes, you have technical things to learn. Yes, your training has gaps, but you have something that can't be taught: a direct connection between your emotions and your fingers. A musical intuition that most pianists spend decades trying to develop. That's not hype. That's not viral sensation nonsense. That's real talent." Maya felt tears welling up in her eyes. She'd spent so many years doubting herself, playing quietly in her apartment, never quite believing she was good enough. And now, one of the most respected music teachers in the city was telling her she had something rare, something worth nurturing. "I need time to think," she said finally. "Take all the time you need." "Well, maybe not all the time," he added with a gentle laugh. "The semester starts in 3 weeks. But think about what you want, Maya, not what everyone else wants from you or for you. What do you want?" After they hung up, Maya sat in silence for a long time. Her phone continued to buzz with notifications, but she ignored it. She walked over to her upright piano, the one she'd played almost every night for years, and sat down on the familiar bench. She placed her fingers on the keys and played a simple melody. The same one she'd started with last night before everything changed. But this time, she played it differently. This time, she played it as someone who knew she was good, who'd been told by experts and strangers alike that her music mattered, that it moved people, that it was worth sharing with the world. The next 3 weeks were a blur of decisions that would shape the rest of Maya's life. She turned down the record deals, politely declined the television appearances, and told the talent agency she wasn't ready for representation. Each time she said no, she felt a mixture of relief and terror. What if she was making the biggest mistake of her life? What if this chance never came again? But every time doubt crept in, she remembered Professor Chen's words. Real talent doesn't disappear. And more importantly, she remembered how she felt sitting at that grand piano, playing not for fame or money, but simply because the music needed to come out. That feeling was what she wanted to chase, not the flash of viral fame that could fade as quickly as it had appeared. She did accept Professor Chen's scholarship. Giving notice at her tech job was surprisingly easy. Her manager had seen the videos too and seemed more excited about her music career than sorry to lose her as an employee. Her co-workers threw her a small goodbye party, and several of them admitted they'd always thought she'd seemed destined for something more than data analysis. The hardest part was telling her family. Her parents, practical people who'd worked hard their entire lives to provide stability, were worried. A career in music seemed risky, uncertain. But when Maya played for them, really played the way she had at the fundraiser, her mother cried and her father sat in stunned silence. Afterward, he hugged her tightly and whispered, "I never knew. All these years, I never knew you had this inside you." Moving into the conservatory's housing felt like stepping into a different world. The practice rooms were soundproofed, lined with acoustic panels, each one containing a beautiful piano. For the first time in her life, Maya could play as loud as she wanted at any hour, without worrying about neighbors. The freedom was intoxicating, but the transition wasn't easy. The other students at the conservatory had been training formally since childhood. They could sight-read complex pieces effortlessly, understood music theory in ways that made Maya's head spin, and spoke a language of technical terms she'd never learned. In her first music theory class, she felt lost and overwhelmed. Realizing just how many gaps her self-teaching had left, There were moments when she questioned everything. Late one night, after struggling through a particularly difficult theory assignment, she sat in a practice room with tears of frustration running down her face. Maybe she didn't belong here. Maybe viral fame was just luck, not real talent. Maybe she'd made a terrible mistake turning down those record deals. Professor Chen found her there, still sitting at the piano bench with textbooks spread around her. He didn't say anything at first, just sat down in the corner chair and waited. Finally, Maya spoke. "Everyone here is so much better trained than me. They know things I've never even heard of. I can't read music as fast as them. I don't know the Italian terms for dynamics. I'm behind in everything except ... double quotes." She trailed off. "Except," he prompted gently, "except when I just play. When I forget about all the rules and theory and just let the music happen. That's the only time I feel like I know what I'm doing." Professor Chen smiled. "That's because that's your gift, Maya. The other students here have excellent training. Yes. They can read any piece of music put in front of them. They know their scales and arpeggios perfectly. They understand harmonic analysis. But most of them are still searching for what you already have. A genuine musical voice. You're not behind. You're just on a different path. Doesn't feel that way in music theory class. Music theory is a tool, like learning grammar when you already know how to speak. You're fluent in music emotionally and intuitively. Now you're learning the technical vocabulary to understand and articulate what you've been doing naturally. It's harder this way, I won't lie. But it also means you won't lose that raw authenticity that makes your playing special." Over the following months, Maya worked harder than she'd ever worked at anything. She spent hours in the library, catching up on music history and theory. She practiced sight reading until her eyes ached. She attended every master class, every lecture, every performance she could. But she also protected her practice time, the hours where she could just play, just explore, just be herself at the piano. Professor Chen became not just her teacher, but her mentor. He helped her understand the technical aspects of what she'd been doing intuitively. Why certain chord progressions created tension and release. How to structure improvisations so they told a coherent story. The historical context of the various styles she naturally blended together, but he never tried to change her essential approach. Her emotional honesty at the instrument. 6 months after arriving at the conservatory, Maya gave her first official recital. It was a small event just for the conservatory community in an intimate hall that seated about 100 people. She was terrified, but it was a different kind of fear than she'd felt at the charity fundraiser. This time, she was prepared. She knew what she was doing and why. She'd chosen her program carefully, a mix of classical pieces. Some jazz standards she'd rearranged, and 3 original compositions she'd written during her time at school. As she walked onto the stage and saw the piano waiting for her, that same feeling washed over her. The stage fright melted away, replaced by excitement and purpose. Maya played for an hour, losing herself in the music, just as she had that night at the Grand Hall. But this time, there was more depth, more understanding behind every choice she made. The training had given her new tools, without dulling the emotional edge that made her playing unique. When she finished, the applause was warm and genuine, and she knew she'd taken an important step forward. Word spread about her recital. Soon she was being invited to perform at other venues around the city. Small concert halls, jazz clubs, university events. Each performance built her confidence and her reputation. But Maya was careful now, selective. She only accepted opportunities that felt right, that allowed her to play the music she wanted to play, the way she wanted to play it. The viral videos from the charity event still circulated online, and occasionally someone would recognize her. But she was no longer the mysterious amateur who'd shocked everyone with hidden talent. She was becoming a trained musician, someone earning her place in the music world through dedication and growth. Not just viral fame. One afternoon, almost a year after that life-changing night, Maya received an email from Mrs. Rodriguez. The Children's Hospital charity was planning their annual gala, and they wanted to know if she'd be interested in performing. Not as emergency fill-in, not as background music, but as the featured artist. They offered to pay her properly this time, a fee that made her eyes widen. Maya smiled as she read the email. A year ago, she would have been terrified by such an offer. Now, she was excited. She'd grown so much, learned so much, become so much more than she'd been. She wrote back immediately, accepting the night of the gala arrived. Maya stood backstage at the same grand hall where everything had begun. She wore an elegant black dress instead of the borrowed blue one from last time. Her hands were steady as she walked onto the stage, confident in her preparation and her ability. But as she sat at the piano, the same beautiful Steinway she'd played that fateful night, she felt that familiar spark. All the training, all the theory, all the techniques she'd learned over the past year hadn't diminished the pure joy of making music. If anything, it had enhanced it. Given her more ways to express what she felt, Maya placed her fingers on the keys and began to play. The music that flowed out was both familiar and new. She could hear echoes of that first performance, the raw emotion and intuitive musicality that had captivated everyone. But now there was sophistication too, a deeper understanding of structure and harmony. A more refined technique that allowed her to express even more subtle shades of feeling as she played. She thought about the journey that had brought her here. The years of solitary practice in her small apartment, playing quietly so as not to disturb anyone. The night she'd been asked for simple background music and had given everything instead. The overwhelming viral fame that could have consumed her. The choice to step back, to learn, to grow at her own pace. She thought about all the people who'd believed in her Luli, who'd pushed her to attend that first event. Professor Chen, who'd seen her potential and offered her a path to develop it. Her parents, who'd overcome their practical concerns to support her dream, and all the strangers online who'd watched those videos and recognized something real, something worth celebrating. Most of all, she thought about the shy, uncertain girl she'd been, who'd hidden her gift away as if it wasn't worthy of being shared. That girl was gone now, replaced by someone who understood that talent without courage meant nothing. But courage without growth meant settling for less than you could become. The music built to its final crescendo. It's powerful and clear, then settled into a gentle, peaceful resolution. As the last note faded, Maya lifted her hands from the keys and opened her eyes. The audience was already on their feet, applauding not for a viral sensation or a surprise discovery, but for an artist who'd found her voice and learned to use it. She stood and bowed, genuinely grateful, no longer afraid of the attention but embracing it as part of her.